The first time my sister called me emotionally unstable, in front of lawyers, she did it while wearing my father's watch. That detail stayed with me longer than the insult. Gold face. Brown leather strap. Tiny scratch near the clasp from when Dad dropped it fixing a fence 20 years earlier. I noticed because I notice things. Always have. And in families like mine, the person who notices everything usually becomes the problem. The meeting happened on the 32nd floor of a downtown Denver law office 6 weeks after my father died. Rain streaked the windows. Expensive coffee nobody drank. My older brother Grant sat beside our mother looking like he already owned the building. Which, in a way, he thought he did. I remember the attorney sliding papers across the table while speaking in that soft professional voice rich people use when they're about to ruin your life politely. There appears to have been a restructuring of ownership before your father's passing. Appears. That word did a lot of heavy lifting. I flipped through the paperwork slowly while Grant leaned back in his chair like a guy waiting for valet service. The family construction company, Holloway Civil Development, had somehow been transferred almost entirely to him and my mother 3 months earlier. My portion? Gone. Not reduced. Gone. According to the documents, I'd voluntarily surrendered my shares during a family financial stabilization agreement. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes your brain needs a second to catch up to betrayal. I never signed this. Grant folded his hands calmly. You did. No. I didn't. Mom finally looked at me then. Elias, your father was under enormous stress near the end. We all made sacrifices. We all. Interesting phrasing considering only one person lost $8 million. That's when I noticed the signature. Mine looked close enough at first glance. Close enough for strangers. Not close enough for me. See, I print my E slightly backward when I write fast. Tiny habit from childhood. Dad used to tease me about it. The document didn't have that flaw. Yeah. That didn't sit right. But here's the thing people misunderstand about betrayal. The moment itself isn't the worst part. It's realizing how long the betrayal was probably being planned before you arrived. I left the meeting without yelling. That seemed to disappoint Grant a little. He wanted emotion. Panic. Something he could frame as instability later. Instead I just nodded like, sure, whatever. Then I walked into the rain and sat in my truck for almost an hour staring at windshield wipers. My friend Naomi found me there eventually because apparently grief makes you forget people track your location when they're worried. She climbed into the passenger seat holding 2 coffees and one very dangerous level of concern. They really did it? Yep. And your mom signed off? I nodded. Naomi sat back quietly. That's cold. Cold wasn't the word. Calculated was. See, Grant had spent years positioning himself as my father's real successor. He wore tailored suits to job sites. Talked in boardroom phrases. Loved interrupting people with summaries of their own opinions. Meanwhile, I actually ran operations. Field logistics. Contractor negotiations. Permit disputes. Real work. Dad trusted me with problems. Grant trusted himself with appearances. Guess which one photographs better at charity events? For years family dinners turned into subtle performance reviews. Grant would mention quarterly revenue while Mom smiled proudly. Then someone would ask if I was still dealing with trucks and labor schedules. Like I operated a lawn mower instead of half the company. Dad noticed though. Once, after a long project outside Pueblo, he sat beside me on a tailgate eating gas station sandwiches and said quietly, "You build things people stand on. Don't underestimate that." I didn't. But I underestimated Grant. Big mistake. Naomi pushed me to fight immediately. Lawsuit. Fraud claim. Forensic review. I almost did too. Then something bothered me. If Grant forged documents this boldly, he probably believed the paperwork could survive scrutiny. Which meant either he got very lucky, or he got very comfortable. Comfortable people leave trails. So I waited. That part drove Naomi insane. "You're too calm," she said one night while we reviewed company filings at my apartment. "No," I told her. "I'm paying attention. And there's a difference." Over the next month I quietly dug through archived records, vendor agreements, time-stamped board approvals, and internal communication logs I still legally had access to through old operational credentials Grant forgot to revoke. Again. Comfortable people. That's where things got interesting. The ownership transfer hadn't just been forged. It triggered hidden tax liabilities tied to debt restructuring Grant secretly buried inside the company to inflate expansion numbers before acquisition talks. Translation? He didn't just steal my shares. He built the theft on top of unstable financial scaffolding. And only somebody handling operations, not presentations, would notice the timing gaps. That's when I knew this was gonna get messy. Still, I said nothing publicly. Patience again. People reveal themselves faster when they think they've already won. 3 months later Grant announced Holloway Civil was finalizing a major merger with a national development group. Big press release. Local business journal coverage. Fancy rooftop celebration downtown. Mom called personally insisting I attend. That alone told me something was wrong. Families like mine don't invite witnesses unless they need legitimacy. So I went. The rooftop overlooked the city skyline glowing blue against the mountains. Caterers floated around carrying champagne while Grant shook hands like a politician rehearsing for governor. And there I was. The disgraced, unstable brother. Funny enough, people kept gravitating toward me anyway. Project managers. Site supervisors. Old contractors. The folks who actually knew how the company functioned. Grant noticed. You could tell because his smile tightened every time someone laughed near me. Around 9 o'clock he tapped a glass for attention. "I just want to thank everyone who believed in my leadership during a difficult transition period." Leadership. There's that word again. Then he looked directly at me. Some people confuse loyalty with entitlement. Ah. There it was. Public humiliation disguised as wisdom. A few awkward chuckles floated through the crowd. Mom avoided eye contact entirely. And honestly, that hurt more than Grant talking. Because silence becomes participation eventually. I waited until the room settled. Then I asked calmly, "You want to explain the concealed liabilities before or after the merger attorneys arrive tomorrow?" The entire rooftop went still. Grant blinked once. "Excuse me? You leveraged falsified ownership restructuring against debt exposure tied to Western Crest acquisitions." I took a sip of water. "Which would have been hidden successfully if operations records hadn't contradicted your timelines." No yelling. No theatrics. That's the trick. Truth lands harder when it arrives quietly. Grant laughed too fast. "You have no idea what you're talking about." Actually, another voice said behind him, "He does." 2 men from the acquiring firm stood near the elevator entrance holding folders. Apparently Naomi had sent her findings to their compliance division 48 hours earlier. Didn't tell me either. Smart woman. Everything unraveled fast after that. Not explosively. Structurally. The merger froze pending investigation. Auditors entered. Attorneys circled. Financial inconsistencies surfaced within weeks. Grant's forged transfer documents triggered broader scrutiny into executive conduct and disclosure failures. Turns out arrogance creates paperwork. Mom tried calling me constantly afterward. Mostly crying. Mostly saying things like, "Your brother was under pressure." Interesting how pressure only excused one son in our family. I didn't answer for a while. Not out of revenge. Just exhaustion. 6 months later the company survived under independent oversight after several executive removals, including Grant. I accepted a reduced but legitimate ownership position during restructuring. Smaller percentage. Cleaner conscience. Worth it. The strange part? I never felt triumphant. Relieved, maybe. Like finally setting down something heavy you'd been carrying so long you forgot your shoulders hurt. Last winter I visited Dad's old workshop outside Pueblo. Dust everywhere. Cold air sneaking through warped wood panels. His watch sat inside a drawer Grant must have forgotten during the chaos. Tiny scratch near the clasp. I held it a while before putting it on. Not because it symbolized victory. Because for the first time since Dad died, wearing it no longer felt like inheriting silence.